name some words that you remember about Nick Clear.
I remember you were talking about the Swiss railway and how it would cost the as well.
Yeah.
You're saying that architecture is not really much the way first.
Yes, absolutely. Very good. Very well remembered. You were saying something about drawing being really, really important in terms of architecture. And I think in one way, if you substitute the word design for architecture in any of these talks, you'll get the same message. So Nick Clear might say in design, it's actually really useful to be able to draw in somewhere, whether that's through a computer or through your hand or through a pencil or through your mouth, whatever. But what he did was, he also showed a small snippet of that video. Who in this room has now watched this video? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay. It's just won a really, really big prize in the Sundance Festival in America. And it's like the biggest prize you can win in independent film. So have a look at it. Those people who haven't looked at it, I would say that to write your article on Nick Clear, who's one of his students, you won't be able to write it properly unless you've watched this film called Robots of Brixton. Yeah? 5 minutes, 36 seconds long, so it's not going to take much of your time. And have a look at it. And that may be the starting point for your article about Nick Clear. Now, Nick Clear is obviously a very interesting man. He's also got very interesting things to say. If you missed his lecture, those were videos. Yeah, again, quite complex ideas of space and time, and how do you represent them in the world, in these spaces? How do we represent complex ideas within videos like this? Okay, then we move on to Stacey. Now, you don't have Stacey, but this lot do. They know Stacey very well. What was her lecture about?
Digital death.
Yeah, so what does that mean? What does digital death mean?
Like what happens to all your files online, like once you die or something like that?
So, all right, I'm going to ask you a question. If you die, do you think you still live on in the digital world?
I think only for a certain amount of time, because nowadays, like even things like Facebook, if you don't log on for a certain amount of time, they deactivate your account. So I think that gets deleted. But if you have insurance on it, then I guess you can live on for.
I mean, that to me is a very, what I would call a practical answer. What Stacey was talking about was philosophically, do you die in the digital world? Scott?
I think yes.
Yes, to what? You do die.
Yeah, they do die online as well. Because your accounts are still there, but they're all not active. Nothing happens. It's like the same as your body. Your body still is there when you die. It's like inanimated and no life.
Fantastic, I think. Have you written that down? You certainly will do, because that's a great start for a thought. Scott's thought was, no, in one way, once you die in the digital world, there is the difference between the spirit and the body. Now, I would have to say that Stacey would come along and argue very strongly against that, because in one way, you could say your identity is tied up now with the digital world. Your identity, who you are, or who you pretend you are, more like. Yeah, so there is again a philosophical move here that is really, really interesting that Stacey was dealing about, is whether in this idea of the digital death, whether there is any way you can really die. And that sounds all very morbid and very sad, but actually really quite interesting. I did my PhD on photography and memory. When photography was first, or when the first artifact of photography came into existence around about 1826, it suddenly changed the way the world looked, and the way we thought about the world. Suddenly we had this object that was a representation of the world that had never been seen before. And sometimes what I want you to think about is when you're writing your articles, think about what happens before we had the digital. We lived on in our photographs, we lived on in our artifacts. The digital world is different because it has this fantastic thing of replicating itself. It's a bit like a virus. You know, sometimes a good virus, sometimes a bad virus. It goes on, it goes on, and it goes on. So, again, with Stacey's talk, either describe what she said and then go, I don't know what she was talking about. There were things in there that Jean Baudrillard was talking about, or Jacques Derrida was talking about. Who is Jacques Derrida? I'm not asking you to answer that question. That's a rhetorical question. You might go away and find out who he is, and that may be a part of your article. Okay. Then last week, we had someone who talked exceptionally passionately about what? What did you talk passionately about? Only last week, so some of you must remember. What did Rachel Armstrong talk about last week? What sort of architecture? Harmless architecture. Okay, ecological architecture. Some people are now having a tweet conversation with Rachel Armstrong because they've said something about that lecture on Twitter, putting her at Living Architect. She's picked that up and said something quite nice to Joe. Is that right? By the end of this course, I want you to realise that, and I'm going to show you just a very short film in a minute, about this idea that you are a part of the world, politically, philosophically, and actually now digitally connected to the rest of the world. And that's a fantastic thing. Because what happens is, at the moment, in our lifetime, we have one brain in our heads. And we try to remember things. We try to learn things through our brain, that's through our hands, that's through our noses, through our ears, through doing stuff. In this age, we've got the rest of the world to help us. So we can ask a question to the rest of the world, like, how do you learn? And you'll get a number of answers back. If you're connected. If you're not connected, you're just going to sit there and you're not going to think about it. You set up a Facebook page which says, how do I learn? Yeah, and start to try and get people to give their answers, then people will start to answer that question for you. So in one way, what you're doing is you're saving yourself quite a lot of time. So, Rachel Armstrong last week, the videos are up there of her, so if you missed it, have a look at it, and that's something I'm going to emphasise. I got the register, I know when you missed the lecture, so I'll be looking for in your magazines that you've actually looked at these videos, because they're quite, well, should be quite useful for you to remember what happened, or if you weren't there, to have a look at it. Okay. Okay, we've got 10 minutes. 5 of those minutes are going to be a short little film, and the other one is to go back and think about this one question that I want you to answer, and in your article, I want you to try and think about this. Perhaps if you've got an answer already. The question I asked, okay, I've asked a few questions. What have I learned? How do I learn it? How do I learn that piece of thing? The question I want you to think about for 5 minutes, and I want you to start to think of an answers, is what is a record? Anybody got an answer straight away?
Something you keep track of. Something you keep track of.
Something you keep track of. So you've written that down? Okay, there you go. So you've had an idea, right, you've answered Mark, and you said, Mark, the thing was an idea. So I immediately go to my laptop, if I'm recording it, then I won't be able to. A record is something that I keep track of. Okay, another answer?
A list of information that you put down in order to be like, yes.
Yeah, so it's a list of information. I like the idea that it's a list, often a record. What some of you are doing now, what I'm doing on the video, is recording the whole event, which is quite tricky, because if you want to go back and look at that bit that was really interesting, you have to go all the way through the thing. So in one way, what I would have suggested you do is to record this event and actually take notes at the same time. Because then you've got a double piece of recording going on. You've got the actual event, and then you've got a list of things. So you may have key events. Has anybody here made a film that's longer than 10 minutes? Okay, when you do, what will happen is the easy bit about filmmaking is shooting the film. You stick the camera up, get a beautiful angle of it, you get the zooming in and out, you've done the story bit. The hard bit about filmmaking, or one of the hard bits about filmmaking, is the editing. Because suddenly you've shot 4 hours worth of film. You don't quite know which bit of the film is the good bit. So good filmmakers always keep a record of what they've done. Now you're all being a bit too clever. Give me another answer to what is a record. Go back to Vaughan Oliver. Yeah, they're about 12 inches. Yeah, that's a record. And if you think about the word record, why is a record called a record? It's really daft, because it's a record of that piece of music. Yeah, it's recorded, and in the old days it was recorded on vinyl. So, these lecture series, the content is quite interesting, I think. Some of the speakers here have been phenomenally high up in their field. But your job, which is the harder job, is to record that, edit it, and put it into this very short piece of film, writing, blog, with pictures, with images. That's really, really difficult. That doesn't happen easily. So the one thing you should perhaps learn is to record well. Record the events as well as possible. And what I would suggest you do from now on is not just rely on the video camera, because guess what? You're going to have to watch it again. And that's another hour worth of your life you're going to have to watch again. If you've recorded it in note form, if you've recorded it in notes, then you can go back to the note and go, oh yeah, I remember that one. What I was going to do is, because it's recorded already for me, I can go back and think, oh, I know where that was about halfway through. In fact, I would be recording, and I'd be recording the time by it. Yeah? Or I'd be saying that was the lecture about Rachel Armstrong, it was about cells and protest cells, etc. So I keep a really good record. Okay, the last thing I want to show you is a small film about what it's like to be a networked student. Before I show you that, there's a longer video at the bottom. Again, when I come to read your articles, I will know whether you've watched this video or not. It's half an hour long. I would suggest you watch 20 minutes of it. It goes on a bit at the end about that. You can stop it. The most interesting bit about this video is that he is a Harvard professor, so possibly the top university in the world, talking about what he thinks the 7 skills that a student needs when they leave university. Okay, I'm going to ask you one question before I show you this shorter film on the top. What do you think employers, first thing they ask the student, they're looking for in the student when they leave university? What is the first thing they're looking for that research has shown? Can anybody have a guess? Experience and confidence. They're there, yeah, but they're not necessarily what an employer is looking for.